Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carter Walker, and I am sick right now. That's why I'm all comfy like. Also, it's freezing here, so that's why. If I sound a little weird, there's a lot of weird cuts. It's because I started coughing, or I'm like trying not to die right now. I got some sort of sickness. So I wanted to talk about my top 10 best movies of 2023. For me personally, this was a great year for movies. There was a lot of good movies this year. I feel like just the movies that everyone expected to be great, or the movies that everyone expected to perform well at the box office just didn't perform well. Some movies just weren't as good as they hoped. And so that's why people are saying it's not a very good year. In my opinion, I had a great time with the movies this year. I'm just happy to be here, man. I would like to do some honorable mentions. I'm just going to throw out some movies that I really loved here. It's not going to be in order. I'm not going to start with like 20 and go down to 10. I'll look at my list that I have pulled up on my laptop right here and just kind of read out what seems interesting. And the first thing that comes to mind is When Evil Lurks, an Argentine horror film that is a genuinely unique take on the possession genre. It's foreign and it's very, very well done. I had a great time watching this in the theaters with my friends. It is so dark, so bleak that I cannot believe my eyes when I watched it. But I really enjoyed it. The only reason it's not higher up is because it's not very rewatchable, just how bleak and dirty it feels, but it's so expertly crafted and it is genuinely horrifying. It got under my skin and is one of the only horror movies that actually scared me this year. We have Gran Turismo, one of the best surprises of the year. It's a PlayStation racing biopic true story video game movie. So many different adjectives you can apply to that movie. It's so fun. But I had a really great time with this movie. David Harbour gives a genuinely great performance here. And the main actor, I am forgetting his name. He's also in Saltburn, which I'll talk about a little later on. His name is Archie. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, Archie. Archie Madekwe. Oh, I'm sorry, dude. It was just fun. It was a great surprise. The racing scenes were great. That's all I gotta say. We got Godzilla minus one, which I've seen on a lot of top 10 lists, very, very high. I liked it. I had a ton of fun with it. And I know this is going to sound so American of me, but I like Godzilla when he runs and he's quick. I know, travesty. But the atomic breath scenes were jaw dropping and exhilarating. And the movie does a great job as a metaphor for post war trauma and struggles with PTSD and how you reshape as a nation afterwards, that I found genuinely touching and very moving. So overall, I really enjoyed this. I'm not trying to slight any movie on here by being not in my top 10. Coming in at number 10, we have a two-way tie. And I know I shouldn't be doing this, but we have Saltburn, which is the Jacob Elordi, Barry Keoghan, I always mispronounce that, movie about how bad Barry Keoghan does or doesn't want to sleep with Jacob Elordi. And I had a ton of fun with this movie. It was so good. It's beautiful, very gorgeous to look at. The plot evolving and unfolding is so interesting to me. Probably the best looking movie of the year. Gorgeous to look at. Everyone here gave a tremendous performance. And that's why it's tied with number 10, which is Transformers Rise of the Beasts, because I believe Saltburn is the better movie by far. By far. And I'm honestly, probably in the future, it will go higher on this list, probably around the 7, probably around like 5, 6 area. But for right now, it's tied comfortably with Rise of the Beast just because I love Transformers. I'm a full blown nerd. Optimus Prime is sitting back there, Lego Optimus Prime that I just finished today while watching Rise of the Beasts today. Well, I guess last night, whenever I upload this. And honestly, Rise of the Beast is a ton of fun. The characters, the human characters, they're palatable. They're not great. They're not terrible. Noah can be really interesting, but also a little annoying at times. And Elena is pretty good for the most part. The humor here is really funny, honestly. Mirage, especially, is great. Although I do think they have one too many lines for him. Sometimes a lot of these studio movies need to know when not to have dialogue and when to like cut lines in the middle of an action sequence. But I found it very, very enjoyable. Optimus Prime gets a great arc here with learning how to trust humans, and it's so interesting hearing and seeing him talk about how he doesn't like humans. He just wants to go home. And watching Noah and Optimus have like a similar arc was actually very effective. And old school hip hop and Transformers shooting each other goes so well. I can't believe no one did it before. I can't believe it. It's tremendous. It's jaw dropping. It blew my mind. I loved it. But Transformers Rise of the Beast and Saltburn are my number 10 tied. I just really enjoyed those movies. I had such a great time with them. In my mind, Saltburn's a little higher, but I just wanted to shout it out because I found a ton of enjoyment in Saltburn. Some people don't like it, some people do, and I found a ton of enjoyment with Transformers. That's just how I am. Coming in at number 9, this is gonna get me This is gonna get my nerd card revoked. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I was debating on putting this movie at number 3 or not on the list at all, and I settled on number 9 because this is a movie to where it does so much right. The characterization of Miles Morales is fantastic. His arc is so good. Learning to become Spider-Man, learning to be Spider-Man, knowing that he is meant to be Spider-Man. The characterization of Gwen Stacy and Peter B. Parker and Miguel O'Hara, all the different Spider people, Spider-Man, however you want to say it. You have Spider-Bite, you have Scarlet Spider, that are just like fun additions thrown in. You have Spider-Punk, who's great. I love Spider-Punk in this film. I really enjoyed him. And you just have such a great animation style and just so well done. You have so many great cameos that are there to actually service the plot and move it forward. The multiverse, the Spider-Verse aspect fits in well. It feels natural in the film. It doesn't feel shoehorned in for baiting purposes to get audience in the seats at the theater. It feels genuine. The score is phenomenal. The voice acting is phenomenal. Pretty much everything is great here. But I have one glaring issue with this movie. The plot is incomplete. It's a part 1. I'm going to say it. It's an incomplete story. Everyone in the Instagram comments, YouTube comments, it's incomplete. Come at me. It is not a whole story. This movie is probably one of the movies that fell the most. I had it as a 10 out of 10 when I first reviewed it. Now I'd give it like an 8, 8.5, because probably an 8.5, because everything is so good up until the last like 20 minutes. As soon as Miles jumps off the train and starts to go home, it is so, for me, the plot should have ended there. The movie doesn't know when to stop itself because it ends at the worst possible time. It ends on the worst cliffhanger. It genuinely infuriates me every time I watch it, to where when I watch the movie now, I stop. As soon as Miles takes the Wayback Machine or Go Home Machine, I turn the movie off. I did that last time and I was like, wow, I actually enjoyed that more than I would have if I had finished the movie, because the last 20 minutes are a complete waste of time. You either think the movie's going to end right there when he gets in the Wayback Machine, or tease a little bit when he goes home. That is, spoiler alert for Spider-Verse and movies on this list, that he's not actually home. But it doesn't. It goes on and it sets up more plot threads. More characters are introduced in the last 10 minutes of the freaking movie, and it just keeps going and going and going. And Gwen's arc is resolved. That means it's a full movie. No, it doesn't. The main plot thread is still unresolved. Half the freaking movie plot threads and character arcs are unresolved. So much going on that's unresolved. Definite part 1. It soured me immediately. As soon as the reports started to come out, I was like, this movie, dude, they overextended themselves. I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my favorite character of all time. Peter Parker and Miles Morales is honestly up there. I love Miles Morales. He is Spider-Man. But watching this movie just infuriates me at the end. It just cuts off at the worst possible time. The pacing is completely shot because of it. It just takes a nosedive in quality completely. And the teases, like, you either are like, okay, it's going to go for 20 more minutes, or it should have ended 20 minutes ago. I rant every time I rant, and I apologize. This movie is really, really good, except for the last 20 minutes, which completely tank it for me. But as it stands right now, Across the Spider-Verse is a great time for me, but it's not perfect. And in my opinion, Into the Spider-Verse, much better. Anyways, rant over. That's probably the longest I'll talk about this movie. Also, there's quite a few movies that I didn't quite get to. I just said quite twice. I didn't get to, like Wonka, Beau is Afraid, Rebel Moon, Kandahar, Past Lives, Anatomy of a Fall, May December, Boy and the Heron, Dream Scenario, The Holdovers, quite a few movies that I didn't get to. So if you see a movie that's not in this top 10, then and you're like, oh man, what the heck is he thinking? Most likely I didn't see it. Or if it's Killers of the Flower Moon, the runtime was a little too long for me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I can't do it. I can't do it. Drop your top 10 down below, and I'll get started with number 8, which was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Another great animated movie, and wow, that beat Spider-Verse. I can't believe it. Actually, I can. To me, the plot is much better here. It moves a lot brisker, although the animation isn't as... I don't prefer the animation in this. I do think Spider-Verse does almost everything better. That last 20 minutes, like I said, just tanks it so hard to where I can watch and not be upset at all and actually enjoy everything within the movie. Even though I'm a big Spider-Man fan, I'm a Ninja Turtles fan, but I'm not like huge. I haven't read the comics or anything. But Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem does a lot right. I think the humor is great. I laugh at a lot of the jokes. The theme of acceptance and the story of the turtles trying to be accepted is really touching to me, and I resonated with it quite a bit. So that's why it's a little higher. I love this movie. The voice acting is great. The humor is really funny. The turtles are awesome. Master Splinter is great as well. I just had a really good time with this movie, and every time I rewatch it, it goes a little bit higher, and so that's why. Spider Verse, the experience gets a little worse each time, whereas Ninja Turtles, it gets better each time. I loved Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Probably my favorite animated film of the year, and I do think that the characterization is great in this film. I just had a really fun time watching this movie. Coming in at number 7 is a movie I have seen literally no one talk about. That's They Cloned Tyrone with Jamie Foxx, John Boyega, and Teyonah Parris. A great Netflix movie that released the same weekend as Barbie and Oppenheimer. So it was like being sentenced to be shot in the head the second. It was like sentenced to death. As soon as it came out, it was sentenced to death by public firing squad in front of everybody or in front of nobody because nobody watched this movie. I had a ton of fun with it. It is great. It's a wonderful thriller, and it's not really made for me. I had a great time just watching it and enjoying it and being like, yeah, this probably isn't made for me, but I'm having a great time here. The themes are resonating with me. The story is very well told, very interesting. The characters have amazing banter back and forth. They have a great dynamic. Jamie Foxx gives probably the most underrated performance of the year. Second to him is John Boyega giving the most underrated performance of the year because those two are phenomenal in this movie. Teyonah Parris is great as always, and everyone in this film gets a lot of great things to do. It's very surprising, very shocking what happens. It was a lot more violent and dark than I expected it to be, and I think that worked for its benefit. It tells a story of classism and of racial dynamics that I found to be very, very satisfying when the film wrapped up. And I honestly just really enjoyed it. I think I'm probably going to rewatch this one as soon as possible. I have a catalog to get through, but this is definitely going on the list because They Cloned Tyrone was fantastic. Everyone, the performances just were amazing, and the writing and the look, the grunge of the film was very well done. It definitely just makes you feel dirty. Not because of where the people are at, but because of how they're treated. I think that once you watch the film, you'll understand. I understand me saying it at face value probably sounds a little iffy, but when you watch the film and you see everything, the look, anyways, great movie. Go and check it out. I had a ton of fun with this movie, and it definitely flew under most people's radars. Coming in at number 6, we have John Wick Chapter 4, which was my first 5-star movie this year, I believe, and it is tremendous. The action is phenomenal. Keanu is phenomenal. Donnie Yen is phenomenal. Everyone in this movie is so good, and I loved the story, and I loved just John Wick fighting for his freaking life and just being hunted by everyone and everything in this film. It made it so much fun, so interesting to watch. Everyone is a suspect, like you're on your toes the whole time, and the ending is great. A great send-off for John Wick, a great way to wrap up the quadrilogy of films. No spoilers there. It's just, they said it was the last one, hopefully, and then they're like, we might make 5. Don't make 5, please. But I always go back to, I've seen this 2 or 3 times. Most of the movies on this list I've seen about 3 times, actually. Wow, I'm kind of a loser, except for the exception of one that just recently came out. But yeah, I try and watch movies on my list 3 times, and I've seen this 3 times, and I really enjoyed it. The Dragon's Breath overhead sequence is so good. There's moments of comedy here that actually really work for me. And although the story is a little I just had such a good time with this movie. I love the John Wick franchise. My dad and I watched all of them together. And so watching this one was a little, it's personal for me. I love action movies. I share a lot of the action movies that I watch with my father and vice versa. And so a lot of my movie taste, especially for hardcore action, comes from my dad. So a movie like this definitely just ends up on my list. It might not be the best movie, but man, I had a great time with it. And there's some awesome action in here that I just can't complain. Going into the top 5, we're going to do Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. This movie is great. Although for me, it was a little step down from Fallout. Fallout was one of my favorite action movies of all time and one of the best action movies ever made, in my opinion. And so stepping back from that to more of a thriller aspect, thriller AI caper with this film, where it just everything felt a little off. And so it kind of puts you on edge, like against everything, because the villain is so ahead of the IMF, so ahead of Ethan Hunt. You're like, wow, what's happening? And it was just so much fun to watch and guess, and everything being done in camera because Tom Cruise is a genuine cinema-loving madman who just wants to risk his life for my entertainment was so good, and all the stunts were phenomenal. His chemistry with Haley Atwell was great, as is Rebecca Ferguson, because their chemistry is great. She's a tremendous actress as well. And it also had great writing for Ethan as a character. His dynamics with Luther and Benji and Ilsa and Grace is always fun. There's an interaction, I don't even know how to say it. There's a sequence, a beat in this movie that I thought did wonders for Ethan as a character. Just incredible acting and line delivery from both Haley Atwell and Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise says, "As long as you're with me, your life will always mean more to me than my own." And Grace says, like, "How can you say that? You don't even know me." And Ethan goes, like, "What difference does it make?" For me, that was like, oh, this is peak writing. I'm getting excited just talking about it, man. It was peak writing because he doesn't care about countries, allegiances. He just cares about people and protecting people because he knows humanity is good. And so watching that, man, that was peak. The stunts were great. Everything was great. And the writing for Ethan, honestly, was my favorite part of this film. I go back to this movie just to see Ethan be written phenomenally well. The Mission Impossible movies are tremendous. Christopher McQuarrie, you're the GOAT, dude. I love you. Coming in at number 4, the most recent watch on this list is The Iron Claw. This was by far one of the saddest movies I've ever seen in my entire life, but it was incredibly well made. This movie has stuck with me for so long. When I first reviewed it, I don't think I did a review on my channel, but I give it like 4.5 stars. It's 5. It's 5, dude. And it's stuck in my mind for so long. The final like act of this film has just stuck in my head. And Zac Efron needs to be nominated for something, because if he isn't, that is a definite snub. Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, all do phenomenal in this film. Lily James, great as well. And I know I sound repetitive, but this movie is just tremendous. You just feel for Kevin Von Erich. It just breaks your heart over and over again for about 2+ hours. And it's so well made that I was bawling in the theater at the end, and you could hear everyone else crying as the credits rolled. And I was like, oh my gosh. But everything in this movie is perfect, and it does something to where it pulls on the good and both the bad aspects of family and paints it in a light where it displays, hey, this is what's great about family, and this is what's bad about family. And for me as a brother and as a son, it was so incredible to see on screen and just see struggles played out in a realistic manner. And Zac Efron just absolutely sells it. His body language, his facial expressions, even just like slightly in the wrestling scenes, or interactions with Lily James, or when he's just on the phone, you can just see the devastation in his face and hear it in his voice, his fear for his family. And this movie is just a 2-hour ride on breaking your heart and just causing you so much emotion, to where I don't think I felt emotion like this in a theater, except for my number 1 pick. Number 3 is Air, a movie that wasn't on my radar until I saw the trailer, and I was like, Ben Affleck. I love Ben Affleck as a director, as an actor. I'm checking that out day one, and I was not disappointed. Ben Affleck does it again, making Michael Jordan and Nike feel like underdogs. Crazy, crazy, crazy. This is the story of how Michael Jordan became an icon. Some would say the GOAT. I'm not going to act like I have enough basketball knowledge to say Michael Jordan is the GOAT, but he is up there, easy. And watching this movie makes you feel like Michael Jordan is an underdog. Nike is an underdog. Like, there's no way they will ever make it. And you watch the movie and it's so triumphant. And Jason Bateman has a phenomenal dramatic scene that I'm just thinking of now, has nothing to do with Michael Jordan, but his scene with Sonny, aka Matt Damon, about the cupcakes and being in the park. And he says, "You're at the end." He says, "You're just a dad who has Sundays with his daughter in the park," or something like that. That one, that got me, dude. I teared up. This movie is just so expertly written, so tight, and it's so concise with its planning and its plotting. And you just see everything unfold. Everything makes sense. You don't have to have a perfect knowledge of basketball to know what's going on. You don't have to have a perfect business knowledge to know what's going on. The movie fills you in on all of that, on how the shoes are made, on how they're marketed, on how the players are marketed, on how the players perform. And the montage speech that Sonny gives in the third act gives me chills every freaking time. Ooh, man, it's so good. For me, this one came out of nowhere, which it shouldn't have, because Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, Chris Tucker, Marlon Wayans, or is it Damon Wayans? One of the Wayans brothers, Viola Davis, holy cow, she gives a performance. She is so good in everything. Viola Davis is incredible in this film. This movie overall, I adored. The score, the soundtrack makes you feel like you're in the 80s, 90s. So good. Coming in at number 2 is the biggest surprise of the year, and I am not joking. That is Oppenheimer. This was a movie. I made my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2023 list. It was not on my list. I love Nolan's movies. It just wasn't on my list. I wasn't sure how a 3-hour Nolan biopic would play out. And it played out tremendously. This movie was phenomenal. This movie was the best movie I saw this year. Wasn't my favorite, but it was the best. The performances are so good. Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh. The cast is stacked. You could literally go on for about 2 minutes naming everybody in the cast, and you'd forget someone. But the performances are so good, and the last hour being a courtroom drama only, and yet still being as impactful as it is, it's incredible. It's a testament to how good Nolan is behind the camera. It nails something that I think a lot of biopics had an issue with this year. It has a genuine through line. So even though it goes and flies through time and history, all this information, it stays focused on who Oppenheimer is as a person. It has that courtroom thing to balance it, to anchor it, and focus on his interactions with people. So you always have something to look out for. Whereas Napoleon, Priscilla, other biopics this year, in my opinion, didn't really do that very well. And it makes sure that you know what's going on at all times. And I think Robert Downey Jr. gives one of my favorite performances of all time here as Louis Strauss. Alden Ehrenreich, gosh, he gives a great performance as well. And their scenes in the third act were my favorite of the year. I adored this film front to back. The score is breathtaking. The atomic bomb scene is incredible. Oh, I shouldn't have doubted Nolan. I can't believe I did as a film fan. I doubted him. I was a fool. I was an idiot, and I am so dumb, and I can't believe I did it. But overall, this movie, phenomenal. For me, a 10 out of 10 that deserves it and is staying where it's at right now. 5 stars, 10 out of 10. Number 1 is going to be something that I haven't seen on a lot of top 10 lists. That's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I love the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like I mentioned in this movie, I love Marvel, I love the MCU, I love superheroes, I love comic books, I love movies. And when I was watching this movie, I thought, I love comic books, I love movies, I love comic book movies. Like I love film, and it makes me feel so many emotions that I normally wouldn't feel. And watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a movie about a D-list comic book team back in 2013 that no one knew who they were besides hardcore Marvel fans. And now everyone knows their names. The trilogy is one of the best in the MCU. The Guardians of the Galaxy are like household names. People know Rocket, Groot, Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax. And for me, this was my favorite movie of the year by far because I love the Guardians of the Galaxy. The MCU, I've said many times before, was my gateway to movies. It was my gateway to comic books. And so when I started reading the Guardians of the Galaxy comic books, granted I haven't read a ton, but I've read some, I keep hearing the characters' voices from the MCU in my head as I'm reading their lines. I imagine like the art shifts in my mind to be like Chris Pratt as Star-Lord as he's like talking to Drax or like fighting Thanos. I think of that in my mind. And so as someone who grew up watching the Guardians of the Galaxy evolve in the MCU, this was something that was very cathartic for me, something that was very heartwarming, heart-wrenching even. Someone who loves what James Gunn makes is movies about misfits, movies about people who don't fit in, people that struggle with everyday things. You get to see Rocket's family sacrifice everything for him to where the plot was very straightforward, but the High Evolutionary is such a despicable villain. The characters are so interesting and fun that it doesn't matter. You're just there along for the ride, and their dynamic is so great, and everything about it is incredible. Spoilers here. I teared up when they revived Rocket, and I cry when Rocket sees, it's so stupid, I cry when Rocket sees the raccoon, the word raccoon, because he's not a machine, he is an animal. He is not a monster like he thought. He is just like those innocent little raccoons in there. But because of what the High Evolutionary did to him, it removed his innocence and made him something, and it made him into something he thought was a monster. And he can actually be happy and find happiness in life. And so seeing something like that, it's so silly when I say it out loud, but when you watch the movie, James Gunn just directs this thing so well. I understand people love to hate on Marvel now, and they haven't been as good as they have been. I can admit it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 slandered. Come on, dude. No, we do not tolerate that here. Oh my gosh. I understand. Some people might think it's cringe, but at the end of the day, dude, I like what I like, and I freaking loved Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It is one of my favorite MCU movies, and I honestly, one of my favorite movies of all time. It is incredible, it's phenomenal, very touching to me, and although it's not perfect, some of the humor I think doesn't land very well, particularly a lot of the stuff with Drax, like my poop is a metaphor. Like, oh my gosh, like my butt is capable. I think some of the potty humor is stupid. I always have. Maybe it has a little bit of an issue with tone because it's so dark and so mature. Butt jokes, or he'll like hit someone on a motorcycle. That was really funny though. I love this movie. I've rewatched it like 4 times now, and my ranking hasn't changed. It's number one for 2023 because I just love comic book movies. I love comics. I love everything that's like nerdy. That's just me. So, have you agree with my list? I expect that you definitely would not because no Killers of the Flower Moon on here, no Beau is Afraid. I got Spider-Verse low. This guy's talking crazy, man. But yeah, let me know what you think about the list. I really enjoyed making this. What's your top 10? But yeah, let me know how many movies you guys watched and what you did. And I just wanted to take a quick minute and say thank you for all the support on my channel. It's been so much fun. I've been growing very, very slowly, but I don't even care. It's been fun just to make these videos and just to make whatever I want. And I just love talking about movies, man. I love it. And I'm just very glad. Even if no one watches this, even if one person watches this, I just love doing this. It's just so much fun. I'm grateful. New year, you reflect. I'm grateful. As always, guys, I'm Carter Walker. Have a great rest of your day.